Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your intricate stack of sources, the articles, the academic research, the personal notes, and turn complex history into essential understanding.
And today, we have a true giant.
An absolute icon. We are undertaking a deep dive into the life, the music, and maybe most importantly, the revolutionary politics of Robert Nesta Marley.
That's right.
And this isn't just about revisiting the hits, it's about getting under the hood, understanding the engine that drove the man.
Exactly. When you look at the raw data, I mean, we're talking about someone whose sales are estimated at over 75 million records. A pioneer who fused reggae, ska, and rocksteady and just, well, redefined global music.
For sure.
But our mission here is to move past that, that poster image of the smiling benevolence. We're really unpacking his spiritual life, his often incredibly dangerous political stands, and the personal complexities that really forged the icon.
Absolutely. The critical consensus backs it all up. Rolling Stone put him at number 11 on their 100 greatest artists of all time.
As they should.
He was born in 9 Mile, Jamaica back in 1945, and he so quickly became this symbol of Jamaican identity, the global voice for Rastafari.
Yeah, but to really understand the weight of that symbolism, you have to go right back to the beginning, to these really stark, contrasting origins.
We have to. We need to go back and really excavate the foundations of the mystic.
Let's do it.
So Marley's earliest environment, it was defined by this inherent contradiction. He was born in 9 Mile, St. Anne Parish, on February 6, 1945.
Right.
But the circumstances around his parents are they're so stark, and they immediately throw you into the whole complexity of race and class in the colonial Caribbean.
It's the first major internal conflict he ever had to navigate. His mother, Cedella Malcolm, was Afro-Jamaican, and she was only 18 years old.
19.
Yeah. And his father, Norval Sinclair Marley, was a white Jamaican man with Welsh ancestry. And Norval was about 64 when Bob was born.
Wow, so that's a 46-year age difference.
A staggering difference. And Norval's background is just as telling. He was a private in the British Army, but he often called himself captain.
So there's this hint of, social climbing or status, even if it wasn't quite real.
Precisely. But for all that, he provided almost no tangible support. He was basically absent.
Right. He was always traveling, barely saw them, and offered very little money.
And then he died when Bob was just 12. And that void, that lack of a father figure, especially a white, higher status father, it absolutely shaped Bob's later incredibly fierce commitment to his African identity.
It's like he spent his life asserting the identity that his own father and the society around him might have tried to ignore.
100%.
And speaking of identity, there's that great little anecdote about his name. We all know him as Robert Nesta Marley, but that's not how he was born.
No, it isn't. He was born Nesta Robert Marley.
So what happened there?
It was passport official. Apparently, the official thought Nesta sounded too much like a girl's name for a boy's passport.
You're kidding.
Nope. So he just swapped them, officially changed it to Robert Nesta Marley. It's a tiny bureaucratic detail, but it says so much about the casual imposition of outside rules on a person's identity.
Something he would spend his entire life fighting against on a much, much bigger scale.
Exactly.
So at age 12, his whole world just fundamentally shifts. He and his mother leave that rural quiet of 9 Mile, and they move to Trenchtown in Kingston.
And this move was crucial. I mean, Trenchtown was the absolute heart of the capital's musical ferment, but it was also the heart of its poverty and deprivation.
A government yard tenement.
Yeah, dense, crowded, volatile. It really became the crucible for his musical awakening, and not long after, his spiritual one.
And this is where his bond with Neville Livingston, who we all know as Bunny Wailer, really deepens.
It does. And they were practically family already, weren't they?
Yeah.
Bunny's father, Thaddeus Livingston, and Bob's mother, Cedella, actually had a daughter together, Claudette Pearl.
So that just cemented this brotherhood. They were under one roof, sharing everything.
And that shared experience directly fueled their music. They were soaking up everything. The local ska, which was Jamaica's first big genre, and all the R&B they could get from American radio stations drifting over the water.
And they were just relentless about starting a group. They went through so many names.
Oh, yeah. The Teenagers, the Wailing Rude Boys, the Wailing Wailers.
Before they finally landed on just the Wailers. And before they could even properly play instruments, their obsession was vocal harmony.
That is the single most important foundational fact. Their harmony work was everything. And this is where Joe Higgs comes in.
The local legend from Higgs and Wilson.
Right. He lived nearby, and he basically took this young trio under his wing, became their first real mentor. and he was tough.
He wasn't just teaching them to sing, he was instilling discipline. He's the one who helped them craft those legendary tight harmonies that define their whole early sound,
And he took the critical next step. He taught Marley how to play the guitar.
giving him the tool he needed to turn the rhythms in his head into actual songs.
And all that training, it paid off fast. In 1962, Marley goes and records his first 4 songs for a producer named Leslie Kahn.
Judge not, 1 cup of coffee. She released under a different name, right?
Yeah, Bobby Martell. But the real breakthrough, the game changer, was signing with Coxsone Dodd at the legendary Studio One.
The epicenter of early Jamaican music.
Totally. And under Dodd, the Wailers released Simmer Down in 1964. And this wasn't just a hit song, it was a cultural phenomenon.
It sold, what, an estimated 70,000 copies in Jamaica alone?
An incredible number. It made them stars overnight. Because Simmer Down was a ska tune, but its lyrics were speaking directly to the rude boy problem, the angry, marginalized youth causing trouble in Kingston.
So even with that infectious, upbeat tempo, it was really a social commentary, a warning to cool down.
A perfect reflection of the tension of that moment.
And by 1966, the lineup was set. Junior Braithwaite, Beverly Kelso, Cherry Smith, they all departed.
Leaving that legendary, powerful core trio, Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, and Bunny Wailer, ready to take on the world.
So the late 1960s, this marks a period of just massive change for Marley, both inside and out. Personally, in 66, he marries Rita Anderson.
Right. But then immediately after that, we get this really fascinating chapter, his American exile.
It's amazing. The sources all confirm he briefly moves to Wilmington, Delaware, in the U.S. because his mother was living nearby.
So think about that. This is the future global prophet, the voice of the third world, working a totally anonymous blue-collar American job.
He had just become a star in Jamaica with Simmer Down, a celebrity. And then suddenly he's a lab assistant at DuPont.
Or operating a forklift on an assembly line at a Chrysler plant in Newark, Delaware. And he's doing it all under an alias, Donald Marley.
It's just an incredible pause in his destiny. It shows this powerful pragmatism. He was just trying to earn enough money to support his family and fund his musical dreams back home.
Yeah, he wasn't just waiting for fame. He was working inside the very system he would later call Babylon.
And when he gets back to Jamaica, that's when the spiritual and musical revolution really kicks into high gear.
It does. Despite his Catholic upbringing, Marley fully converts to Rastafari in the 60s. He moves away from his mother's faith, and this is when he starts to grow his dreadlocks.
Which are so deeply symbolic in Rastafari. They represent a covenant with God, with Jah.
And that spiritual commitment, it becomes the lens for everything that comes next. And musically, he connects with one of the greatest innovators in Jamaican music history.
Please scratch Perry.
And the Upsetters. Now, that partnership was famously turbulent. It barely lasted a year, ended in a big fight over recording rights.
But creatively, it was just explosive.
Absolutely. Many people, and you'll see in the sources, they consider the material they made together to be the Wailers' absolute finest work. It's so raw, so militant. Perry, this eccentric genius, he helped them strip their sound down to the bone.
Right, creating these spare, hypnotic rhythms that were all about the bass and drums.
And it was during this late 60s period that the music itself was changing.
Yeah.
It started with fast ska, then the slower, smoother rocksteady. And now the true reggae sound was being born.
So what was the defining change? What was the new sound?
The rhythm. Specifically, the one-drop beat. See, ska emphasized the second and fourth beats, the upbeat. Reggae slowed the whole thing down and shifted the accent to the third beat.
With a one drop.
The one drop. It created this heavier, more meditative, almost loping feel. You can really hear it on their 1971 album, The Best of the Wailers, on tracks like Full Shakedown Party.
And you hear less of the bighorn sections from ska. The focus shifts almost completely to the electric guitar playing that rhythmic stank on the offbeats.
Those hypnotic bass lines.
Yeah.
Which would become the absolute trademark of the genre.
But here's the fascinating tension from that time. Even as they're forging this definitive roots reggae sound with Scratch Perry,
Right.
Marley is simultaneously chasing mainstream pop success.
Yes. The sources talk about him recording demos for JAD Records, working with a songwriter named Jimmy Norman in the Bronx around 1968.
And this wasn't roots music. This was a serious commercial effort to break into the American market.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
He was explicitly experimenting with whatever was popular in the U.S. He recorded doo-wop songs like Stay With Me, these 1960s-style slow love songs.
So it's a world away from the militant Rasta message he was developing back in Trenchtown.
It's this powerful dichotomy. The revolutionary message was always in this push and pull with the ambition to be a global recording star.
And that ambition is what ultimately leads him to London in 1972. He lived at 34 Ridgemount Gardens in Bloomsbury. There's a plaque there now.
He was being strategic. He understood that to break America, he probably had to conquer the UK first.
And that London residency turned out to be absolutely essential because it set the stage for the one meeting that would change everything.
The stage was set, 1972. Marley is touring the UK with the singer Johnny Nash.
Right. And the Wailers, in what has to be one of the greatest accidents in music history, they go looking for Chris Blackwell of Island Records.
And they're not there to pitch a new album. They're just there to talk about some overdue royalties for old tracks that Island had licensed.
The irony is just incredible. They walk in looking for a small check.
And Blackwell sees a chance to revolutionize his label and, really, music history. He was looking for a new artist to replace Jimmy Cliff, who had just left. But Blackwell, a white Jamaican himself, he understood the raw political power that Marley represented.
He didn't just see a reggae musician, he saw a potential rock icon.
Exactly. He thought Marley was the perfect image for what he called rebel music. An artist who could translate that raw, revolutionary energy of the ghetto for a global rock audience that was hungry for authenticity.
And the deal he offered just proved it, a £4,000 advance to record an album.
Which was not a cheap local reggae contract. That was rock band money. It showed Island was all in.
And the album they made, Catch a Fire, from 1973, that is the true watershed moment. It was the first time a reggae band got access to the same state-of-the-art studio treatment as their rock and roll peers.
Blackwell acted as the executive producer, and he actually restructured Marley's original mixes. He deliberately toned down that overwhelming bass-heavy sound that you'd hear on a Jamaican sound system.
Why? To make it more palatable for international audiences.
To make it translate on international stereos and radio. He said he was aiming for more of a drifting, hypnotic type feel that would be an easier entry point for rock listeners.
And the packaging was just genius. It was marketed like a rock album, famously with that unique cover designed to look and open like a Zippo lighter.
That wasn't just a gimmick. It was a statement. It said, the Wailers belong on the same shelf as Led Zeppelin.
And it worked. The album got major critical buzz.
Then the very next year, they released Burnin', which includes I Shot the Sheriff, and this is where it all explodes.
Because in 1974, Eric Clapton covers that song.
And it becomes Clapton's first U.S. #1 hit.
That one cover gave Marley instant, massive visibility to this huge American rock audience that might never have found him otherwise. His credibility as a world-class songwriter was just cemented overnight.
But right after Burnin', the internal dynamics of the band just fractured. By 1974, the core trio Marley, Tosh, and Wailer, they disbanded.
Too many differences in vision.
Yeah, especially over the compromises needed for mainstream success and the political direction of the music. It just wasn't sustainable. So Marley continued on as Bob Marley and the Wailers.
He had to rebuild the band from scratch, but he did it with this incredible roster of musicians that, you could argue, made the sound even more polished and powerful for the big stages.
The foundation was that phenomenal rhythm section. The Barrett brothers. Carlton on drums, and Aston Family Man Barrett on bass.
Family Man is still one of the most important bass players in modern music history.
Absolutely. Then you had Junior Marvin on guitar, Tyrone Downey and Waya, Lindo on keys, Seco Patterson on percussion. Just a powerhouse band.
And crucially, the iconic backing vocal trio, the I3s.
Judy Mowat, Marcia Griffiths, and his wife Rita Marley. They brought this rich, spiritual harmony that was different from, but just as powerful as, the original Wailers.
And with this new, polished lineup, the global rise just accelerated. In 1975, the live version of No Woman, No Cry from the live album, that became his first real international hit.
It just captured the raw energy of his stage show perfectly.
Then his traction in the U.S. was solidified when Rastaman Vibration in 1976 hit the top 50 of the Billboard Soul charts. He was no longer a niche artist.
No, he was breaking into the American mainstream. And Chris Blackwell solidified that investment. He gifted Marley the property at 56 Hope Road in Kingston.
Island House.
Island House.
Yeah.
And it became Marley's home, his office, and the headquarters for his Tough Gong Studios. It was him planting his flag back in Jamaica, even as his star was rising across the world.
But planting that flag in Jamaica, unfortunately, put him directly in the crosshairs of some incredibly intense political violence.
It did. In December 1976, just 2 days before he was set to play the Smile Jamaica free concert, the assassination attempt happened right there, inside 56 Hope Road.
You really have to understand the context here. Jamaica in the mid-70s was basically spiraling toward the Civil War.
It was deeply polarized between Michael Manley's People's National Party, the PNP, which was leaning towards democratic socialism,
And Edward Seaga's Jamaica Labor Party, the JLP, which is more conservative and aligned with the U.S.
and Marley, because of his huge influence, became unavoidable collateral damage. The Smile Jamaica concert was actually organized by Prime Minister Manley to try and ease these tensions.
So by agreeing to perform, Marley was, whether he wanted to be or not, seen as taking a side. He was seen as supporting the PNP.
Which made him an immediate political target. Unknown gunmen stormed his home. Marley, Rita, and their manager Don Taylor were all shot and wounded.
It was a clear message. In this war, neutrality is not an option.
The defiance that came next is just the stuff of legend. Despite having wounds in his chest and his arm, Marley chose not just to show up 2 days later, but to perform.
In front of 80,000 people.
80,000 people. He reportedly said, "The people who are trying to make this world worse are not taking a day off. How can I?"
It was just this incredible act of high-stakes political theater. He was showing them that his message of unity was stronger than their guns.
But after that, for his own safety, he had to leave. The sources are clear. This was a self-imposed exile.
He left Jamaica for nearly 2 years. After a month recovering in the Bahamas, he moved to England. And that period in exile turned out to be unbelievably creative for him.
This is when he produces the masterpieces Exodus and Kaya. Exodus, in 1977, was a commercial monster. It stayed on the UK charts for 56 consecutive weeks.
56 weeks.
Musically, it was this profound synthesis. He was incorporating blues, soul, British rock. It made his sound truly international.
And Exodus was so much more than just a hit record. It was this whole narrative of movement and spiritual quest. It had global anthems like Exodus, Waiting in Vain, Jamming, and of course, One Love.
And One Love is such a fascinating example of cultural borrowing because it interpolates the melody of Curtis Mayfield's classic People Get Ready.
So even while he's having all the success in London, he's still facing the scrutiny of Babylon firsthand. He gets arrested.
Yeah, arrested and convicted for possession of a small amount of cannabis. A pretty clear reminder that no matter how famous he was, his religious practices were still illegal under British law.
We also get these little glimpses of his celebrity status in the UK, like the video for Is This Love, which was filmed in London and featured a very young Naomi Campbell.
Right, before she was famous.
This exile is what created the global superstar.
But his heart was always in Jamaica, and eventually he had to go back.
He returned in 1978 to perform at the seminal One Love Peace concert.
And this wasn't just a concert. It was a monumental political statement. At the climax of his performance, he does what no politician had managed to do.
He physically brings the two warring rivals, Prime Minister Michael Manley and opposition leader Edward Seaga, onto the stage together.
And he makes them shake hands.
It's pure high-stakes political theater. He was asserting the power of music and Rastafari unity over the entire divisive political system. That photo of the handshake is one of the most powerful images of modern Jamaica. The raw energy of his shows from that time was captured perfectly on the live album Babylon by Bus. The final track, Jamming, you can just hear the audience is in an absolute frenzy.
And after his return, Marley's focus becomes increasingly Pan-African. His 1979 album Survival is defiant, it's politically charged. It's less about the smooth rock fusion and more about militant solidarity.
With songs like Zimbabwe, Africa Unite, Wake Up and Live. He's explicitly supporting the liberation struggles happening all across the African continent.
His opposition to apartheid in South Africa was loud and clear. He spoke at the Amandla Festival in Boston, echoing the anti-war message of his earlier song, War.
And he saw that fight in Africa as the central fight for the soul of the entire diaspora.
Which is why it was the ultimate validation for him when he was invited to perform at Zimbabwe's Independence Day celebration on April 17, 1980.
To perform for a newly liberated African nation, for him, that was the fulfillment of the Marcus Garvey philosophy that he lived by.
Yeah. And his final studio album, released in his lifetime, Uprising, it shows this shift back toward more personal spiritual themes. Maybe a reflection of his failing health.
It's incredibly religious, with the acoustic anthem Redemption Song and the devotional Forever Loving Jah.
Marley's identity was this complex mosaic, but at its very core were the unbreakable beliefs of Rastafari. He converted back in 1966.
Right, moving away from the Catholicism he was raised in, and the central belief for him was the conviction that Haile Selassie I, the Emperor of Ethiopia, was the incarnation of God, or Jah.
And that belief, it anchored his entire worldview. It gave him the spiritual basis for Pan-Africanism and for rejecting the colonial power structure, which Rastas called Babylon.
This conviction also directly informed his view on cannabis, or ganja. He wasn't just a casual user.
No, not at all. He was an ardent supporter of its legalization, but he saw its use as a sacrament, an aid to meditation, a pathway to a deeper spiritual connection. It was an act of worship for him.
There's that famous quote where he says, "When you smoke herb, herb reveal yourself to you, herb make you meditate, is only a natural thing."
And his arrest back in '68 for possession just shows this was a deeply held belief he was willing to suffer for, not just some fashionable stance.
What's really fascinating, given how committed he was to Rastafari his whole life, is the spiritual shift we see at the very, very end.
Right. The sources note that shortly before he died, on November 4th, 1980, he was baptized into the Ethiopian Orthodox Church by an archbishop, and he took the name Burhan Selassie.
Which isn't seen as a rejection of Rastafari, right? It's more of an embrace of the institutional church that Haile Selassie, his God incarnate, had led.
Exactly. Perhaps a way of seeking a closer spiritual alignment in his final months.
And beyond his personal faith, his politics were just explicitly Pan-Africanist. He believed fiercely in the unity of African people everywhere.
He drew so much inspiration from the Jamaican political activist Marcus Garvey, who championed a black self-reliance in the early 20th century.
There's a direct link, isn't there? The lyrics of Redemption Song are heavily influenced by a speech Garvey gave in 1937.
A direct link. He was constantly singing about fighting Babylon and celebrating African independence in songs like Africa Unite and Zimbabwe. He blended spiritual belief, political action, and music into one seamless thing.
His personal life, much like his background, was also very complex. He married Rita Anderson in 1966.
And his family was large and non-traditional by Western standards. The official Bob Marley website acknowledges 11 children.
That's 3 with Rita, 2 adopted from Rita's previous relationships, and then 6 more with 6 different partners outside of his marriage.
It says a lot about Jamaican cultural norms around family and also just the reality of his life on the road. For example, one of the adopted children, Stephanie, was born to Rita and another man, but Marley adopted her and she was entitled to his estate.
It showed a real commitment to the children who were in his life, regardless of biology.
And that musical dynasty just continues today through his grandkids, like Skip Marley and YG Marley.
But the man wasn't just, theology and hit records. We have to talk about his other great passion. Football. Soccer.
He played constantly.
Not just occasionally, but like an obsession. He'd play pickup games in parking lots, in fields, even inside the recording studios.
He saw it as a spiritual release, a way to connect. He was a huge fan of the Brazilian club Santos Pele's team and Tottenham Hotspur in England.
He was so serious about it, he hired a Jamaican international footballer, Alan Skillcole, to be his tour manager.
That famous quote says it all. "If you want to get to know me, you will have to play football against me and the Wailers." It shows that competitive, collaborative spirit.
And one last, just wonderful humanizing detail that cuts against the image of the militant ascetic: his cars.
The BMWs?
He owned a couple of BMWs. He claimed it wasn't for the luxury, but because he insisted the initials stood for Bob Marley and the Wailers.
It just shows that playful side, rejecting the status symbols even as he was acquiring them.
The story of Bob Marley is just so intrinsically tied to how short his life was, cut tragically short by illness. In July 1977, he gets the diagnosis that would define his final years.
A crowd lentiginous melanoma, a rare form of skin cancer, found under the nail of his right big toe.
And it is absolutely essential we clear up the myth here. This was a symptom of a cancer that was already there. It was not caused by a football injury, which is what you so often hear.
The injury just drew attention to the lesion. And worse, this type of melanoma, while it's the most common type in people with dark skin, it wasn't widely recognized in medical textbooks at the time.
Which led to a critical delay. The sources say he had to see at least 2 doctors before they even did a proper biopsy to confirm what it was.
It just highlights this terrible disparity in medical awareness, and it cost him crucial time.
And then came the fateful defining choice. The doctors advised him to immediately amputate the toe to stop the cancer from spreading.
And Marley refused.
He rejected it on religious grounds. He felt that amputation would violate the Rastafari belief in keeping the body whole as a temple. And he worried that disfigurement would compromise his role as this symbol of strength to his followers.
So instead, he opted for a much less effective surgery, just removing the nail and nail bed and covering it with a skin graft.
This choice to prioritize his symbolic role over a potential cure just highlights that tension between the man and the mission.
And despite how serious this was, he just kept touring relentlessly. He completed the whole European leg of the Uprising tour.
He played his biggest concert ever to 100,000 people in Milan, Italy. His final outdoor show was in Dublin in July of 1980.
Then the tour moved to the U.S. He played 2 packed shows at Madison Square Garden. But the end was clearly getting near.
On September 21st, 1980, he collapsed while he was jogging in Central Park.
Scans revealed the devastating truth. The melanoma had spread. It was in his brain, his lungs, his liver.
His final concert was just 2 days after that collapse, September 23, 1980, at the Stanley Theater in Pittsburgh. And then he canceled the rest of the tour.
He went to Bavaria, Germany, to seek an alternative treatment at a clinic there. He spent 8 months, but the cancer was just too advanced. The treatment failed.
He decided to fly home to Jamaica one last time, but his condition got so much worse on the flight that they had to divert to Miami.
And he died there, at Cedars of Lebanon Hospital, on May 11, 1981. He was only 36 years old.
His final words to his son Ziggy were just heartbreaking and so instructive. On your way up, take me up. On your way down, don't let me down.
His funeral, on May 21st, was a massive state event, and it beautifully combined his complex spiritual life. It had traditions from both Ethiopian Orthodoxy and Rastafari ritual.
He was buried in a chapel near where he was born in 9 Mile.
And the items in his casket are just the ultimate symbol of his identity. His red Gibson Les Paul guitar, a Bible open to Psalm 23.
And a stalk of cannabis, placed there by his wife Rita.
The eulogy from Prime Minister Edward Seaga really captured his place in the nation's heart. He said his voice was an omnipresent cry and that such a man cannot be erased from the mind. He is part of the collective consciousness of the nation.
And his posthumous recognition just confirms that status. The Jamaican Order of Merit, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in '94.
Time magazine called Exodus the album of the century, a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award in 2001.
Commercially, the engine never stopped. The compilation Legend from 1984 is still the best-selling reggae album of all time.
And his message continues to resonate in the most amazing places, like among Native American tribes, the Hopi and the Havasupai.
But we have to integrate that critical perspective from the author Dave Thompson, who worried that all this commercial success sort of emasculated Marley.
Right. His fear was that the global marketing machine stripped away the ghetto kid who dreamed of Che Guevara and the Black Panthers and replaced him with this sanitized, easy-to-digest image of smiling benevolence.
It's that tension again, isn't it? The conflict between the militant spirit and the demands of being a global rock star.
Exactly. While that commercialization made sure his message reached billions, Thompson's argument is that it dulled the revolutionary edge.
And his story, in all its complexity, from his mixed-race heritage to the political danger, it continues to be explored, not just in documentaries, but in major literary works like Marlon James's novel, A Brief History of 7 Killings, which fictionalizes the violence around that '76 assassination attempt.
It's just an endlessly fascinating and powerful story.
So we've really tracked the full, intense arc of his life, from the contradictions of his birth and the poverty of Trenchtown, through the musical innovations, the strategic leap to global stardom, and the intense political battles he fought and barely survived.
He achieved a level of fame that few ever do, but he remains so profoundly anchored in his spiritual and Pan-African beliefs right until his life was cut short by that rare, aggressive cancer.
Marley didn't just popularize reggae. He really did transform it from a local Jamaican sound into a universal language of liberation.
His genius was that ability to fuse his very specific personal struggles, Trenchtown, Rastafari, with these huge, universal, human themes of freedom and unity. He wasn't just a musician. He was a genuine political and spiritual revolutionary who happened to wield a guitar instead of a gun.
And his dedication to maintaining that image, that role, right up until his final breath, is so central to his whole mythos.
It is. We talked about how he famously rejected the advice to amputate his toe, choosing a less effective path based on his religious need to remain whole, to maintain his image of relentless strength as a Rasta leader.
So considering his tireless commitment to perform, to embody the movement, how did that dedication to being a living physical symbol rather than just a recording artist who might prioritize survival, how did that shape the intensity, the brevity, and ultimately the eternal legacy of his career?
And what is the true ultimate price of maintaining that image of uncompromising strength? Something to think about as you listen again to those anthems of revolution.